I've been working in sanitation for about 12 years now. It's not a glamorous job, obviously. You smell like rot for half the day, your back aches constantly, and you become invisible to society. Most of the time, it's boring. Diapers, food scraps, Amazon boxes. But every once in a while, you get a route that feels off. 3 years ago, I was assigned the graveyard shift in a literal sense, mostly because of the hours, 3 a.m. to 11 a.m., but also because the route covered the old estates up on Blackwood Ridge. These were massive, sprawling properties set far back from the road, surrounded by dense forests. It was always darker up there, quieter. The streetlights were spaced too far apart, leaving long stretches of pitch-black road where the headlights of the truck were the only thing cutting through the fog. I was working with a guy named Miller. Miller was a lifer, a guy in his 50s who had seen it all and didn't care about anything. He just wanted to finish the route and get home to his beer. I liked Miller because he was calm, but that night, even his calm demeanor started to crack. It was a Tuesday, late October. The air was cold and damp, the kind that seeps right through your uniform. We were making good time, the rhythmic thump hiss of the compactor serving as the only soundtrack to the night. We turned onto Blackwood Ridge Road around 4:15 a.m. "Rich folks produce the best trash," Miller grunted, driving the rig. "Always clean. No needles, no rats. Just expensive waste." I nodded, hanging off the back step as we slowed down for the first pickup. I jumped off, grabbed the bins, and tossed the bags in. Easy. We did about 10 houses without incident. Then we approached the intersection near the old Masterson property. Now, everyone at the depot knew about the Masterson house. It had been vacant for 5 years, ever since the old man died. It was a massive Victorian thing, peeling paint, overgrown lawn. It was supposed to be empty. We never stopped there because there was never any trash. But as the truck's high beams swept across the overgrown driveway, I saw them. 6 black heavy-duty contractor bags were lined up perfectly at the end of the driveway. "Whoa, hold up," I yelled, banging on the side of the truck. Miller slammed the brakes, the air brakes hissing loudly in the silence of the woods. He leaned out of the cab window, looking back at me. "What? We missed one?" "The Masterson place," I said, pointing. "There's trash out." Miller squinted. "Place is empty. Probably some illegal dumper using the spot. Let's leave it. Not on the manifest." I looked at the bags. They were pristine. No dust, no dirt from sitting out long. They had been placed there recently, and in a neighborhood like this, leaving trash behind meant getting a call from the city council. "I'll just grab them," I said. "Save us the headache later." I jogged over to the curb. The silence up here was heavy. No crickets, no wind, just the low idle of the garbage truck engine. When I got to the bags, a strange feeling washed over me. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and forget why you're there, but you feel like someone is standing right behind you? It was like that. I reached for the first bag. It was heavy, much heavier than normal household trash. I grunted, hoisting it up. It felt dense, shifting inside like wet sand or meat. "Hurry it up, kid," Miller yelled from the cab. "Heavy," I yelled back. I swung the bag into the hopper. It landed with a wet, solid thud that didn't sound like trash. It sounded like a body hitting a mat. I went back for the second one. As I bent down, I noticed something on the plastic. It was a smear. In the red glow of the truck's taillights, it looked black, but I knew what color it really was. It was reddish-brown. My heart started to pick up a little. "It's just garbage juice," I told myself. Pasta sauce. Meat marinade. I grabbed the second bag. This one was lighter, but it had hard, angular shapes inside. I tossed it in. By the time I got to the fourth bag, a smell hit me. It wasn't the smell of rotten food. We know that smell, it's sour, yeasty. This smell was sharp, metallic, copper and bleach. "Miller!" I called out, my voice wavering slightly. "Hey, shut the engine off for a second." Miller popped his head out again, annoyed. "Just do it." He cut the engine. The silence rushed back in, deafening. I stood by the hopper, looking at the black bags I'd already thrown in. I was listening. I didn't know what for, but my instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Scratch. It came from inside the hopper. I froze. Did you hear that? Hear what? A raccoon? Miller scoffed, opening his door and climbing down. You're jumpy tonight. Something is in the bags, Miller. It's scratched. Miller walked over, wiping his hands on his pants. He looked into the back of the truck where the compactor blade was waiting to crush everything. Probably a possum got into the bag. It happens. Just crush it. It's humane. Happens fast. He reached for the lever to cycle the compactor. Wait, I said, grabbing his wrist. It didn't sound like an animal. Miller rolled his eyes and shook me off. We're 20 minutes behind, kid. He pulled the lever. The hydraulic wind started. The metal blade began to descend, curling the trash into the depths of the truck. I watched the black bags get squeezed. The heavy one, the first one I threw in, began to compress. The plastic stretched tight against whatever was inside. Then, the bag tore. It wasn't a possum, and it wasn't a raccoon. As the plastic ripped open under the pressure of the blade, a hand flopped out. A human hand. But it wasn't. Right. It was pale, grayish, and the fingers were locked in a rigid, claw-like grasp. Stop it. Stop the truck, I screamed, lunging for the emergency kill switch. Miller saw it too. His face went white, all the skepticism draining out of him in an instant. He slammed the button. The hydraulics hissed and groaned, halting the blade halfway through its cycle. The truck fell silent again. We both stood there, illuminated by the flashing yellow strobe lights of the truck, staring into the hopper. The hand was dangling there, caught between a pizza box and the torn black plastic. Oh God, Miller whispered. Is that real? I couldn't speak. I leaned in closer, my breath hitching in my throat. The bag had ripped further. It wasn't just a hand. I could see a sleeve. A blue flannel sleeve. But then, the hand moved. It didn't twitch like a dying nerve. The fingers curled. They dug into the surrounding trash, gripping a greasy pizza box with frantic, desperate strength. It's alive, I choked out, stumbling back. But that wasn't the worst part. As the fingers clawed at the trash, trying to pull the rest of the body free from the pressure of the blade, a sound came from the bag. It wasn't a scream. It was muffled, wet, and guttural. And then, from the other bags, the ones we hadn't crushed yet, the ones still sitting on the driveway, a chorus of low, muffled moans began to rise. They weren't trash bags. They were cocoons. I scrambled up the metal side of the truck, ignoring the slick grease on the handrails. Get the knife. Miller, give me your box cutter. Miller was trembling, his face the color of ash, but he fumbled for his belt and tossed me the yellow utility knife. I caught it and vaulted into the hopper. You're never supposed to climb into the back of a garbage truck. It's the #1 rule. One slip, one mechanical failure, and you're paced. But I didn't care. I was standing on top of mounds of refuse, sliding on slick plastic, trying to reach the man trapped in the compactor's grip. The blade had stopped just inches from his torso. The pressure had pinned the bag, but the man inside was thrashing, his muffled cries vibrating through the metal floor. I slashed at the black plastic, tearing it away from his face. A young man, maybe 20, stared up at me. His mouth was duct-taped shut, his eyes wide and bloodshot, bulging with a terror so raw it made my stomach drop. His hands were zip-tied behind his back, and his legs were bound at the ankles. He wasn't wearing shoes. He was soaked in sweat and something else, something that smelled like ammonia. I got you, I panted, my hands shaking as I sawed at the duct tape around his wrists. Miller! Call 911. Now! The driveway, Miller whispered. His voice sounded far away. Call them, I yelled, finally snapping the zip tie. The kid gasped, ripping the tape off his mouth, taking in a jagged, desperate breath. They're coming, the kid wheezed, grabbing my uniform collar with bruising force. He saw the lights. He knows you're here. I looked up, confused. Who? That's when I heard the screen door slam. It came from the vacant Masterson house. A sharp, wooden crack that echoed through the silent woods. I pulled myself up to the edge of the hopper to look over the side of the truck. The bags on the driveway were still wriggling. Wet sounds of plastic rubbing against asphalt filling the air. But beyond them, up the long, overgrown path, The front door of the Victorian house was wide open. A bright, white floodlight flickered on above the porch, blinding me for a second. In the silhouette of the doorway stood a figure. It was tall, wearing a plastic apron that glistened under the light. He was holding something long and dark in his hands. "Miller, drive!" I screamed, dropping back down into the hopper with the kid. "Go! Go! Go!" Miller didn't argue. I felt the engine roar, the massive diesel torque lifting the front end slightly as he slammed the accelerator. The truck lurched forward with a violent jerk, throwing me and the rescued kid against the back wall of the hopper. Pop, pop. 2 flashes of light sparked from the porch. A split second later, I heard the ping-ping of bullets hitting the metal side of the truck. "He's shooting at us!" the kid screamed, curling into a fetal position among the garbage bags. Miller swerved the heavy truck, the tires squealing as he swung us around the cul-de-sac. The truck felt sluggish, heavy, like a beast waking up from a nap. As we completed the turn and faced the exit of the street, I risked one last look over the rim of the hopper. The figure was running down the driveway now. He was fast, impossibly fast for someone that size. He wasn't running toward us. He was running toward the bags we had left on the curb. He stopped at the first bag, the one wriggling the most violently. He didn't try to pick it up. He raised the rifle and fired point blank into the plastic. The bag stopped moving. I ducked down, squeezing my eyes shut, my hands over my ears. "Just drive, Miller. Don't stop." We careened down Blackwood Ridge Road, the truck doing 50 in a 30 zone, blowing through stop signs, the suspension groaning as we hit potholes. We didn't stop until we reached the police station downtown, pulling right up to the front glass doors, the air brakes screeching like a banshee. Miller fell out of the cab, vomiting onto the pavement. I helped the kid out of the back. He was covered in slime and coffee grounds, shivering so hard his teeth chattered. The police swarmed the Masterson house 20 minutes later. SWAT, K9 seconds, the works. We stayed at the station for hours giving statements. Miller couldn't stop shaking. He kept saying, "I almost crushed him. I almost pulled the lever." The detectives told us later what they found. The Masterson house wasn't empty. A man had been living in the basement for 2 years, a former surgeon who had lost his license for unethical practices. He had built a makeshift operating theater down there. The bags on the driveway? They weren't just trash. They were his failures. He was trying to perform experimental grafting surgeries, trying to attach limbs from one person to another. The bag I had thrown in first, the heavy one that felt like wet sand, contained the remains of 3 different people, sewn together. The kid we saved was named David. He was a hitchhiker picked up 2 days prior. He was next on the list. The police found 4 other people in the bags on the driveway. 2 were already dead from the gunshot wounds we saw. 2 survived, but they were changed. Missing parts. Parts added. Miller retired 2 weeks later. He moved to Florida, somewhere flat and sunny where he never has to see a forest again. I kept the job. I don't know why. Maybe I feel like I need to be there, watching, because the scariest part wasn't the surgeon or the gunshots. The scariest part was something the detective told me off the record. When they raided the house, they found a ledger, a logbook of all the waste the surgeon had disposed of over the last 2 years. According to the dates in the book, he had been putting bags out every Tuesday for 18 months. Miller and I had been picking up that route for a year. We had crushed hundreds of bags from that driveway. We never checked them. We just threw them in, pulled the lever, and watched the blade come down. And sometimes, looking back, I remember hearing sounds over the roar of the engine. Sounds I told myself were just raccoons. After Miller retired, I got a new partner. His name was Ruiz. Ruiz was young, fresh out of the military, a guy who treated garbage collection like a tactical operation. He was efficient, quiet, and didn't ask questions. That was fine by me. After the Blackwood Ridge incident, I didn't want to talk much either. We were moved to a different district, suburban west. It was a grid of endless cookie-cutter houses, manicured lawns, and white picket fences. It was supposed to be the safest, most boring route in the city. The kind of place where the biggest scandal was someone not separating their recyclables. But evil doesn't just live in creepy old mansions in the woods. Sometimes, it lives in a beige split level with a weeping willow in the front yard. It was midsummer, scorching hot. The kind of heat that cooks the trash inside the bags before you even touch them. The smell in the suburbs is different. It's sweet, rotting fruit, cut grass, and hot asphalt. We were halfway through the shift, sweating through our uniforms. We pulled up to a house on Elm Street. Generic name, generic house. It belonged to an older woman, Mrs. Gable. I knew her because she sometimes left cold Gatorades out for us. She was a sweet lady, lived alone, always waved from the window. Today, there were no Gatorades. Just a single, small silver trash can at the curb. Light day for Mrs. G, Ruiz noted, putting the truck in neutral. I hopped off the back. The can was light. I popped the lid off. Inside, there was just one white kitchen bag, tied neatly with a red ribbon. That was weird. Who ties their trash with a ribbon? I grabbed the bag. It weighed maybe 10 pounds. It felt lumpy, but soft. I tossed it into the hopper. Ruiz was about to hit the compactor button when I saw it. The bag had snagged on a jagged piece of metal near the rim of the hopper. The white plastic stretched and tore, revealing what was inside. It was a doll. A large, porcelain doll wearing an intricate, old-fashioned blue velvet dress. It had curly blonde hair and those creepy, hyper-realistic glass eyes. It was facing me, lying face up on a pile of coffee grounds. Creepy, Ruiz muttered, looking in the mirror. My abuela used to have those. Hate 'em. Yeah, I said, reaching for the lever to crush it. Wait. I paused. The doll looked pristine. Usually, when people throw away stuff like this, it's broken, stained, or missing an arm. This looked like a collector's item. It looked expensive. Why would she throw this away? I wondered aloud. Maybe it's haunted, Ruiz joked, though he didn't smile. Just crush it, man. It's staring at me. I chuckled nervously and put my hand on the lever. But just before I pulled it, the truck gave a shudder. The engine idle dipped low, causing the whole frame to vibrate. The vibration shook the hopper. The doll shifted. As it slid down slightly, the head rolled to the side, and for a split second I saw the neck. Porcelain dolls are made of sections: head, torso, limbs, usually held together by internal elastic or wire. When the head rolled, I expected to see the hollow ceramic opening of the neck or the cloth body underneath. Instead, I saw skin. I froze. Ruiz, kill the engine. What is it with you and stopping the truck? Ruiz snapped, but he did it. I climbed up onto the step to get a closer look. The heat coming off the garbage was suffocating. I leaned over, staring at the doll in the blue dress. It looks too real, I whispered. It's a high-end doll, dude. Move on. I reached out and poked the doll's arm with my gloved finger. It wasn't hard ceramic. It yielded. It was soft. Cold, but soft, like silicone. I grabbed the hem of the blue velvet dress and pulled it up. Underneath the dress, the doll had bruising, dark, purple bruises in the shape of fingerprints around the small waist. My stomach turned over. Ruiz, get out here. Ruiz jumped down, annoyed. What? Did you find money? Look at the skin, I pointed. That's not porcelain. Ruiz leaned in, squinting. He was skeptical, just like Miller used to be. He reached in and grabbed the doll's leg to pull it out. Whoa, he said, dropping it immediately. It's heavy, and it feels like meat. I finished for him. We stared at the thing. It was about the size of a 3-year-old child. The face was perfectly painted, rosy cheeks, pink lips. But the eyes. The glass eyes were fixed, staring up at the sky. Is it a body? Ruiz whispered, his military composure cracking. Did Mrs. Gable? I don't know, I said. But look at the joints. I pointed to the elbows and knees. There were no ball joints. The skin was continuous, but it was too perfect to be a human child. The proportions were slightly off. The fingers were too long. The eyes were too big. Then, the doll blinked. I scrambled back, nearly falling off the step. It blinked! It just blinked! Bullshit, Ruiz said, backing away. It's a mechanism. It's a battery-operated toy. Batteries don't bruise, Ruiz. We stood there in the suburban silence. A lawnmower was buzzing a few streets over. A dog barked. Everything was normal, except for the thing in our truck. "We have to check," Ruiz said, pulling a knife from his pocket. He was trembling. "We have to see if it's, you know." He reached into the hopper again, carefully avoiding the face. He took the knife and pressed it against the doll's arm, just slightly. A tiny cut. He didn't hit stuffing. He didn't hit plastic. A bead of dark, red blood welled up from the cut and trickled down the white porcelain-like skin. "Oh my God," Ruiz gasped. And then the doll opened its mouth. It didn't have a speaker inside. It had a tongue, teeth, a throat. It let out a sound that I will hear in my nightmares until the day I die. It wasn't a cry for help. It wasn't a baby's wail. It was a laugh, a high-pitched, manic, adult giggle that sounded like a recording of a woman played at double speed. He. "Mrs. Gable is watching," the doll said. The voice was raspy, mechanical yet organic, coming from vocal cords that shouldn't exist. "She's watching you right now." I whipped my head around to look at the house. Mrs. Gable's front window, usually covered by sheer curtains, was open. Standing there wasn't the sweet old lady I knew. I looked up at the window, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The figure standing there wasn't the Mrs. Gable I knew. It was wearing her clothes, the floral housecoat she always wore, but the proportions were wrong. The shoulders were too high, jagged, as if they were being held up by a coat hanger. Her head lolled unnaturally to the left, resting almost on her shoulder, and her mouth hung open in a slack, impossible O-shape. But the worst part was her arms. They were raised, manipulating invisible strings in the air. "She likes you." The thing in the hopper giggled again, its voice gargling through the blood, bubbling at the cut on its arm. "She wants to make you pretty, too. She wants to polish you." Ruiz screamed. It wasn't a word. It was a primal sound of pure revulsion. He didn't wait for my command. He slammed his fist onto the cycle button. "No, wait!" I yelled, though I don't know why. I think part of me wanted to save it, or maybe I just wanted to preserve the evidence. But it was too late. The hydraulics roared to life. The metal blade descended. The doll didn't act like a toy. It didn't crack or shatter. As the blade caught the hem of the blue velvet dress and pulled it into the crusher, the doll screamed. It was a human scream, a high, piercing shriek of agony that cut through the humid suburban air. I watched, paralyzed, as the compactor squeezed. There was a sickening, wet pop, followed by the sound of snapping wet wood. Blood, too much blood, for a small body sprayed out in a fine mist, coating the back of the hopper and splashing onto Ruiz's boots. I looked back up at the window. The figure of Mrs. Gable mimicked the doll. As the doll was crushed, the figure in the window jerked violently, her body crumpling as if she too were being compressed by an invisible force. She collapsed backward into the dark room, disappearing from sight. "Drive!" Ruiz yelled, scrambling into the cab, slipping on the slick pavement. "Get us out of here!" I jumped onto the back step, gripping the handle so tight my knuckles turned white. We sped out of the subdivision, leaving a trail of dark, reddish fluid dripping from the back of the truck onto the pristine asphalt. We didn't go to the police station this time. We pulled into a strip mall parking lot 3 miles away. Ruiz jumped out and vomited into a planter. I walked to the back of the truck. The hopper was a mess of gore and blue velvet. But amidst the carnage, I saw parts. Metal rods. Synthetic mesh. But wrapped around them was organic matter. Tissue. Bone. The police raided Mrs. Gable's house an hour later. We found out the truth on the news the next evening. Mrs. Gable had been dead for 3 weeks. She was found in her armchair, decomposed. The person or thing we saw in the window wasn't her. It was a mechanism she had built before she died. It turned out Mrs. Gable had been a pioneer in animatronics and prosthetic engineering in the 72nds, but she had been fired for unauthorized use of biological samples. When they searched her basement, they found a workshop. It wasn't full of toys. It was full of attempts. She had been trying to create the perfect companion. She was lonely. She used parts from high-end dolls, industrial servos, and other things. The police report was redacted, but the rumor among the sanitation crews was that she had been raiding medical waste bins from the cosmetic surgery clinic downtown. She was using discarded skin grafts. The doll we found wasn't fully human, but it was made of human parts. It was bioengineered, and somehow, she had wired it to a localized AI system in her house. But here is the part that keeps me up at night. The police found a journal. In it, she wrote about her successful creations. She wrote that she had made 3 of them. We crushed one. The police found the prototype in the basement. The third one was never found. Sometimes, when I'm driving through the suburbs and I see a child playing perfectly still in a front yard, or I see a face watching me from a window with eyes that look just a little too glossy, I wonder if Mrs. Gable's 3rd child is still out there, watching the garbage men, waiting to be polished. Two years ago, I transferred to the downtown commercial route. I couldn't handle the suburbs anymore. I needed the noise, the grit, the honesty of the city. Downtown trash is honest. It's restaurant slop, cardboard, broken bottles. It's ugly, but it doesn't pretend to be anything else. It was November, raining hard. The kind of freezing rain that turns the city into a blurred smear of neon and gray. I was working solo that night, budget cuts. The truck was a side loader, meaning I could grab bins with a mechanical arm from the cab, but for the narrow alleys, I still had to get out and drag the dumpsters into position. My last stop was an alley behind a block of old industrial buildings in the garment district. These buildings were ancient. Brick monoliths with fire escapes that looked like rusted rib cages. It was a dead-end alley, lit by a single, flickering sodium lamp that buzzed like an angry hornet. I backed the truck in, the reverse beeper echoing off the wet brick walls. I pulled the brake and hopped out into the rain. The dumpster was overflowing. That was standard. But leaning against the dumpster, blocking my access, was a large wooden crate. It wasn't a normal shipping crate. It looked like it had been built by hand, thick plywood, reinforced with metal brackets, and wrapped in heavy-duty chains. It was about the size of a refrigerator. "Great," I muttered, wiping the rain from my eyes. "Who dumps a safe?" I walked over to inspect it. I needed to move it to get to the dumpster. I gave it a shove. It didn't budge. It must have weighed 500 pounds. I sighed and went back to the truck to get the dolly and a crowbar. If I couldn't move it, I'd have to leave the dumpster. And I didn't want to get written up for a missed pickup again. I wedged the dolly under the crate and heaved. Nothing. It was dead weight. "What is in this thing?" I grunted, kicking the side of the box. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. The rain hammered against my helmet, but I heard it clearly. 3 distinct, rhythmic raps from inside the wood. I stepped back, the crowbar heavy in my hand. "Hello?" Silence. Just the rain and the distant hum of traffic. I leaned closer, pressing my ear against the wet wood. "Is someone in there?" A voice answered. It was faint, muffled by the thick plywood, but it was calm, terrifyingly calm. "Excuse me, sir. Has the transit arrived?" It was a man's voice. Polite, articulate. He sounded like he was asking for directions at a bus stop, not trapped inside a nailed-shut crate in a garbage alley at 3 a.m. My blood ran cold. "Listen to me," I shouted. "I'm a sanitation worker. You're in a crate in an alley. Are you hurt? Can you breathe?" "Oh, the air is fine," the voice replied, smooth and unbothered. "Ventilation holes near the top, but I believe I am behind schedule." "Is this the extraction point?" "Extraction point? Buddy, this is the trash. Someone threw you away." There was a pause, a long, uncomfortable silence. "I see," the voice said, sounding slightly disappointed. "Then the experiment is concluded." "That is unfortunate. I'm gonna get you out," I said, jamming the crowbar under the chains. "Just hang tight. I'm calling the police." "No, no police," the man said quickly. The calm facade cracked just a fraction. "Protocol 9 requires immediate disposal upon failure. If you call the police, the containment will breach." "What are you talking about?" I strained against the crowbar. The wood groaned. One of the chains snapped with a loud ping. "Please," the voice said, "do not open the box unless you are the cleaner." "Are you the cleaner?" "I'm a garbage man," I said, ripping the chain away. "That's close enough." I didn't know what was going on, but my instinct was to help. I imagined a kidnapping victim, maybe brainwashed. I wedged the crowbar under the lid of the crate. "Stop," the voice commanded. It wasn't polite anymore. It was authoritative. "Sir, for your own safety, do not open this unit. I am unstable." "Unstable? What, do you have a bomb?" "No," the voice whispered. "I am leaking." I hesitated. Leaking? I looked down at the puddle of rainwater forming around the base of the crate. It wasn't just water. Swirling in the oily sheen of the alley runoff was a black, viscous liquid oozing from the bottom seams of the box. It looked like tar, but it moved. It pulsed. "What is that?" I asked, stepping back. "I told you," the man said. "I am a vessel, and I am full. If you open this, I cannot control where it goes. I should have walked away. I should have got in the truck and driven until the tank ran dry. But human curiosity is a curse, and there was a human being in there. I'm not leaving you to die in a box," I said. I slammed the crowbar down, shattering the lock on the front latch. The wood creaked. The lid popped open an inch. The smell hit me instantly. It wasn't rot. It smelled like ozone, like a thunderstorm, mixed with the smell of burning hair. "I'm sorry," the voice from inside said. "I tried to warn you." The lid was pushed open from the inside. I aimed my flashlight into the crate. Inside, sitting on a small wooden stool, was a man in a pristine gray suit. He was bald, pale, and looked perfectly normal. He was looking down at his hands, which were folded in his lap. "You look fine," I breathed, relieved. "Come on, let's get you out." Then the man looked up, where his face should have been. There was nothing but a smooth, swirling vortex of that black, tar-like substance. It was held in the shape of a face, but it had no features. No eyes. No mouth. Just a shifting, liquid void. And yet, the voice spoke clearly in my mind, not my ears. "Run." I didn't run immediately. My brain simply couldn't process the visual information it was receiving. I was staring at a man in a tailored suit, but where his features should have been, eyes, nose, mouth, there was only a swirling darkness. It wasn't a mask. It looked like looking into a deep well filled with crude oil, spinning slowly. The black liquid that had been pooling at his feet began to rise. It defied gravity, crawling up the legs of his trousers like living vines. "I cannot hold it anymore," the voice echoed in my skull. It felt like a migraine onset, a sharp pressure behind my eyes. "The containment is broken. You have broken the seal." The man or the vessel stood up. As he did, the wooden crate disintegrated. It didn't break. It dissolved. The wood turned into gray dust and collapsed into the puddle of black sludge. That's when the smell hit me harder. It changed from ozone to something archaic. It smelled like old earth, like the air inside a cave that hasn't been opened in a million years. I scrambled backward, my boots slipping on the wet pavement. "What are you?" I screamed, my voice cracking. The figure took a step toward me. The street lamp above us flickered violently. Bzzz! Pop! The bulb exploded, raining glass down on us. The only light now came from the headlights of my truck at the end of the alley, cutting through the rain. But the light was bending. As the truck's beams hit the figure, the light didn't illuminate him. It was absorbed. The darkness around his head seemed to drink the light, creating a funnel of shadow that stretched across the alley. "Don't touch it," the voice pleaded, sounding sadder now. "Don't let it touch you." The black liquid surged forward across the wet asphalt. It moved fast. Faster than water. It was hunting. I turned and sprinted toward the truck. I have never run so fast in my life. I could hear a sound behind me, a wet, slapping sound, like wet towels hitting the floor, getting closer and closer. I threw myself into the cab of the truck and slammed the door. My hands were shaking so bad I fumbled the keys. Tap, tap, tap. Something knocked on the driver's side window. I looked left. The black sludge had coated the glass. It wasn't just on the outside. It was pressing against the window, seeking a way in. Through the dark smear, I saw the reflection of my own face, pale and terrified. And behind my reflection, I saw him. The suited man was standing right outside the door. He placed a hand on the glass. The black void of his face was inches from mine, separated only by a layer of safety glass. "I am sorry," the voice whispered in my mind. "It is lonely. It wants to be known." The glass began to crack. A spiderweb fracture spread from under his palm. I screamed and twisted the key. The massive diesel engine roared to life. I didn't bother checking the mirrors. I slammed the truck into drive and floored it. The truck lurched forward, sideswiping the brick wall of the alley. I heard the screech of metal on brick, showering sparks. I felt a heavy thump as the rear tires rolled over something solid. I didn't look back. I drove. I drove through red lights. I drove the wrong way, down a one-way street. I just needed to get away from the darkness that ate the light. I made it 3 miles before the truck died. The engine just cut out. No sputtering, no warning. The electronics board went black. The headlights died. I coasted to a stop in the middle of a deserted intersection under the pouring rain. I sat there in the dark, clutching the steering wheel, waiting to hear that wet slapping sound again, waiting for the voice in my head. But there was only silence. I sat there for 10 minutes, too terrified to move. Then, blue lights washed over the cab. A police cruiser pulled up. Then another. Then a black SUV with tinted windows. I got out, hands up, blabbering about the man in the box, the black goo, the voice. The cops looked at me like I was on drugs. They handcuffed me and put me in the back of the cruiser, but the men from the SUV, they didn't look at me. They were wearing yellow hazmat suits. They walked straight to my truck. They didn't open the hood. They started spraying the tires that had rolled over the thing in the alley with some kind of white foam. I was held for 48 hours. They took my blood. They shone lights in my eyes. They asked me if I had made contact with a biological agent. A man in a suit, a normal suit, with a normal face, came into the interrogation room. He told me a story. He said there was a chemical spill in the garment district, illegal dumping of experimental industrial solvents. He said the fumes cause hallucinations, paranoia, and temporary psychosis. He said, "You saw a leaky drum of chemicals, and your brain invented a monster to explain the trauma." He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a non-disclosure agreement, and a check. A check for more money than I make in 5 years. "Sign it," he said, "and we forget the traffic violations. We forget the drug test results we could easily fabricate." I signed it. I took the money. I quit the job the next day. I tried to convince myself it was the fumes. It makes sense, right? A hallucination, a stress-induced break. But there are 2 things that stop me from believing the lie. First, I went back to that alley a week later, during the day. The alley was clean. Too clean. The brick walls had been sandblasted. The asphalt had been repaved. It was as if the entire area had been scrubbed of its history. And second, sometimes, when it's very quiet in my apartment, usually around 3 a.m., I get a headache, a sharp pressure right behind my eyes, and I hear a voice. It's faint, like a radio signal from a dying star. "I am still here," it whispers. "I am in the earth now. I am waiting for the next box. I don't take out my trash at night anymore. I let it pile up until the sun is high in the sky. And I never, ever look inside a box if I don't know what's in it. Because I know that everything we throw away goes somewhere. But sometimes, the things we throw away, they don't want to stay gone.